So today we're going to do the handover video on the Chausson Etape 650. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice that you've got your fill-up point, which is just here. Underneath the cover, you've got your diesel point at the top and your AdBlue, which is below. The AdBlue has been topped up from factory, but just to warn you, it will be thirsty for the first 5,000 miles or so as it's priming through the system. So if you find yourself having to top it up often, don't be alarmed, it's just for them first 5,000 miles. Opening up the passenger door, you'll notice that you've got your bonnet release catch, which is just here. Pull that to release the bonnet. And whilst the door is open, you will also notice you've got Remis cab blinds fitted. To operate these, simply pull back like so, and open and lift. Let them lift up, and as you can see, they will then meet up at the top and slot into there. They do a really good job at blacking out the entire cab, and for the front windscreen, all you've got to do is simply pull this black piece of plastic up all the way to the top, and that will black out the front cab. Underneath the bonnet, the main things that you need to know underneath here is if you're ever jump starting the vehicle. You've got your negative terminal, which is just here at the front, as indicated by the sticker above, and your positive terminal is just located underneath this cap with a little plus sign on there. Flip the cap up and you can stick your positive onto there. Obviously they're the main things that you need to know, but just to point out a couple more items, you've got your engine oil here along with your dipstick, which is below. And then above that, you've got your brake disc fluid, your engine coolant, your power steering fluid, and then finally, right in the corner, you've got your washer fluid for the front windscreen. Moving around to the side of the motorhome, you'll find that you've got your fuel awning, which is fitted to the side. I will send you a separate video showing you how that awning operates. As you can appreciate, I've only got the one hand in this video, so I'll send you a separate video showing you how to do that and how to operate it correctly. A couple of things to bear in mind is if it is windy, don't use the awning. You can imagine any little bit of wind could potentially tear the awning away, because it's like having a massive sail on the side of the vehicle. So just bear that in mind. If it's a windy day, take the awning in. And finally, if it is raining, you shouldn't really use it in rain, although it can be used at some point. You do need to make sure that that awning is completely dried out. So don't store it away when it's wet. It does need an opportunity to obviously dry out, so just bear that in mind. Below the awning, you have then got your habitation door, which is just there. That will of course allow you entrance into the vehicle itself, and you can see you've got your fridge vents just next to that. This is where the fridge pulls all of its air from, and I typically recommend, if it is a very hot day, try and keep this area under shade, perhaps by pulling out the awning or turning the vehicle around so it's not in direct sunlight. And next up, you've then got your gas bottle, your external gas, which will just connect into here via a bayonet fitting. That will connect into there and then connect up via your pipe, and then through there you can obviously use your external barbecue. To flow the gas through, you've got a red valve here. Just turn that red valve, make sure your gas is turned on, and that will flow the gas out. And then next up, you've got your cassette toilet locker. With the cassette locker door open, it will give you access to the cassette. All you've got to do to operate this, or to remove this, is lift up on the orange handle, slide out and pull the cassette towards you. Before removing the cassette, please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. If the blade is open, that cassette will get jammed, and it has been known that customers have continued to pull that and subsequently forced it. So try and make sure that the blade is closed. You don't want to remove that when it is open. Providing it is closed and it's free to move, simply pull it out towards you, and then you can begin draining it. To drain it, all you've got to do is remove the cap. The cap is just in the vehicle at the moment. Slide the funnel out, and using the orange button on the back, click that in. That will release an internal vacuum. That will then allow you to empty all the contents out nice and easily, and then if you put a bit of water in here, you can swill it out. I typically recommend using blue fluid as well, and put that directly in the cap. There's a little measurement in there to indicate how much it is required, and then stick the cap back on, push the funnel back in, and that cassette is ready to go back into the locker. You'll also notice that you've got this orange lever here. This also turns, and this is what makes contact with the blade. This should always stay in this position. You never want this off to one side. This should always stay straight, because if that is off, again, it will get jammed. So the easiest way to think of it is if it came out in that way, it needs to go back in that way. So you don't need to do anything with that, so don't worry. But once it's all drained down, as I say, pick the cassette back up, offer it back up to the locker, and simply slide and push until it connects in there, and that is solid and ready to go for when you're travelling. Directly below the cassette, you've also got your first drain down point on the motorhome, as indicated by the sticker. You can see there is a lever just underneath there. Simply pull that lever towards you, and that will allow you to empty your fresh water. So pull that over. When on site, you'll have a big grid that you can drive over. Pull that, and that will allow you to dump all the water nice and easily. Next up, at the rear, you've got your garage. In the garage area, you've got a 12-volt socket as well as a 230-volt socket. Please bear in mind your 230-volt socket will only work when you're plugged into 230-volt mains electric. In the back, you've then got your tie-down points as well, and you've also got some heating, which will keep this area nice and warm should you have anything damp. You'll also notice we've got your carpets and the option for the dinette to berth kit in here, and I will go through this with you on the day. Moving around to the rear of the motorhome, you can see that here you've got your reversing camera just on the bumper, and up at the top you've got your Truma boiler cover. This is in essence the vehicle's chimney, so obviously it's the reason it's up out of the way. Please bear in mind that when you are using the boiler in the motorhome, or the water, when you're basically heating the water, this cap needs to come off. But when you're travelling, the cap needs to stay on, because when you're travelling, you don't want any debris or anything getting into the funnel or the chimney, if you like. But obviously, when you are using the vehicle, that needs to come off that cap so it can breathe. And then onto the other side, you can see you've got another point into your garage. So with this garage door open, you can see I've just removed the wooden panel here, just popped it there, and this brings us on to your second drain down point, which is this little yellow toggle here. This will allow you to drain down the boiler. In the up position as it is, it will allow you to drain it, and in the down position, it will seal it. So when you're using the vehicle, that needs to be sealed in order for the boiler to hold water, to drain it, and you're not using the van, simply flick it up. And like I mentioned, same thing for the wastewater. When you're on site, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over, line yourself up, and open all your drain down points. One thing I didn't mention with the wastewater, what I'd typically recommend for all your drain down points is once you're finished on site, drain the majority of water on site, and then leave all your drain down points open, because as you're travelling home, all the vibrations of the road will ensure that residual water will make its way out of the vehicle. So then when you store in the vehicle, especially during the winter months, you don't run any risk of any trapped water being in the system that could potentially freeze. And whilst we're on the topic of freezing water, you need to always ensure that when you're not using the motorhome, everything is completely drained down. Less so in the summer months, but I typically tell customers to get into the habit of doing so, just to avoid in them winter months you forgetting, and as I say, subsequently getting frozen water in the system. Next up, moving on from your garage, you can see that you've then got your external water. So all you've got to do is connect your hose pipe to there, and that will then allow you to hose down your muddy boots or any bikes or anything that you've got. There is supplied with the motorhome a shower hose. Obviously that will only work when you've got your pump turned on, so just bear that in mind. Next up, you have then got your convenience locker. In the convenience locker, you've got your fuses, which are here, and then you've got your RCD breaker. So if the vehicle ever trips, you can come to this point, and obviously if the vehicle ever blows a fuse, you can come to this point. I'd recommend taking some spare fuses with you, just in case anything blows when you are obviously using the motorhome. On the other side, you've then got your fill-up point for your water. All you've got to do is pull out the funnel, remove the cap, and using a food grade hose pipe, you can pop that in there and fill up your fresh water tank. Beneath there, you've then got this big black cap that you can again remove, and that will allow you to clean out the inside of the tank should you want to. Now, to be honest, that is not really necessary, because all that's going to be in here is fresh water, so there's nothing really harmful in here, and I typically typically don't recommend drinking directly out of the tank. If you're drinking water, just take some bottled water with you. Obviously, if you're boiling the water, you're absolutely fine, but drinking out of it, take some bottled water. So with that in mind, it's not really that necessary to clean out this tank, but you can do if you want, and you just remove that cap by doing so. And then below that brings us on to your final drain downs. You've got 2 drain down points attached to this freshwater tank. This particular one is a quick drain down point, and in the up position, similar to the boiler, it is open, and then flick it down to seal it. This is a quick drain down point, and this will allow you to drain the entire tank down to 20 litres. So say for example you're travelling with water, the manufacturer recommend that you only travel with the maximum of 20 litres in the motorhome. The reason for that is it comes down to your payload to maximise it, and also weight distribution. It's a lot of weight to have in the vehicle, obviously, if you're travelling with 100% water capacity. So with that in mind, if you want to travel with water, we recommend you travel with only 20 litres, and to do that, flick this up and then go onto the inside of the van, select the pump, and that will drain the entire tank down to 20 litres, nice and easy. Now, if you're wanting to drain the entire thing down, obviously flick this up, sorry, and then there's another sticker like there was on the other side, and then underneath there you've got a little push fitting, which I'll show you now. As you can see, it's just there. And all you've got to do is simply turn this valve like so, and you can see water will begin to drain out of the motorhome. And that's how you drain everything, the entire tank, past that 20 litres as well. So all you've got to do is come down here, again line yourself up with your drain down point, and turn that valve, and that will allow you to drain down the vehicle. Whilst I'm down here as well, you'll notice that you've got this metal tube coming down. That is actually the exhaust for the Webasto heater. It obviously works independently. I'll go into more detail on that as we go onto the inside of the vehicle, but just give that a bit of a wide berth if you can. It can get quite hot. Next up, next to the convenience locker, you've got your plug-in point for your 230 volt electric. So all you've got to do is hook that into there and then connect that up to your site. And that will supply the vehicle with 230 volt electric, allowing you to use your sockets throughout the motorhome. That will also charge your leisure battery up as well. Finally, in here we've got your gas locker. In here, this will house a 6 kg or 13 kg gas bottle, and you can see that you've got the straps here to tie that down for when you're travelling. You've got your gas regulator, which is here, and you'll get a pigtail with the vehicle which connects onto the end of this regulator, which can then feed into the bottle. And if you bring your gas bottle on the day, I will happily connect that up for you. When you're travelling, please ensure that the gas is turned off, as indicated by the sticker up here. You never want to be travelling with gas on in the vehicle, because obviously if you're involved in a collision, it's extremely dangerous. So only have your gas on when you're stationary and you're on site, and you do that just by turning it on at the bottle. But like I said, that will connect up via pigtail just onto the regulator, and then that's it. That's all you've got to do. Now that concludes the handover video on the outside of the vehicle. We're now going to move on to the inside. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the motorhome. You can see as we come through the habitation door, you've got a fly screen on here that can of course be pulled across, and then you've got your blackout blind as well. Up at the top, you've then got your control panel for the Webasto heating. So this will basically heat the vehicle. It won't heat the water, but it will heat the vehicle independently. All you've got to do is click the button on, like so. And as it's glowing green, that indicates that the diesel heater is on. And you'll notice that the lights will then begin to flicker. Don't know whether you can see that on the camera. And that is because the system is powering up. So don't be alarmed at that. That lasts for about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, it will go back to normal as it's powered up, and it'll do the same for when you turn it off. So you've then got this little dial here, so you can flick between the temperature. It's a little bit difficult to see on the video there, but I'll have to show you in person. But there's a little temperature gauge on here, so you can change the temperature should you want. If I click that to accept it, you can then change the fan speed as well should you want to. As you can see, you can put it on full max, just the 2, or turn the fan on just to allow that air to flow through. And it's as dead simple as that. To turn it off, just click that button and that will turn off the system. You can change the settings on here as well, so you can set a timer for when you want, as well, and you can also stick this on a ventilate mode, which will, you know, if it is a hot day, it will power the fan and allow all the vehicle to experience a bit of airflow through the van, and just to keep that air moving, and you do that just through there. But as I say, I've just turned that off now. You'll notice the lights are still flickering just as it's powering down. Next up, you have then got the main control panel for the vehicle. You've got your on button here, which will turn on and off everything in the motorhome. You've then got your lights button here, so if I click that, that will turn on and off the lights in the vehicle, as you can see. Next up, we've then got the pump button. If I click that, that will activate the pump. Now, the only time you should be running the pump is if you've got water in the van. Please don't run the pump if you've no water, because all that will happen is it will burn it out. So ensure that you've got water in the van before you click that on. Providing you do, and obviously all your drain down points are sealed, turn that pump button on and go to each of your taps, including your shower, and turn them on and then turn them to hot. What that will do is it will pull fresh water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It will spurt and splutter at first, but then when it's running steadily, you then prime your system for the hot water. Once you've done that, flick it over to cooled and do the same thing. As I say, do this for the shower as well. And that will just ensure that everything, once it's running steadily, that is, everything is primed. And I'd recommend doing that as soon as you get on site to ensure that the boiler's got water in it and everything is primed and ready to use. Once you've done that, you can actually leave your pump on, because on each of your taps you've got something called a micro switch, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. The only time you need to, of course, turn that pump off is when you've not got any water in the vehicle. Next up, you've then got your light button here for the door light on the outside. And then down here you've got the levels for, firstly, your habitation battery. I'll click that now. You can see we're just over halfway on this vehicle. Next up, you've got your vehicle battery level, which, as you say, you're not far off 100% with that. And then finally, you've got your fresh water level, which you can see we're pretty much empty. We've not got much left in the tank whatsoever. For your wastewater level as well, when that is full, you'll get a red light on here to indicate that that needs draining down. And then finally here, you can alter the brightness of the screen should you want. You can put it into night mode so it dims as well. You'll also notice up here, there's a little charger here. That will glow green once you are plugged into electric to recognise that you are charging the battery and you've got access to 230 volt power. Next to this, you've also got a little Webasto diesel heating temperature gauge, so that will is just a heat sensor, and you've also got some light switches here for the lights throughout the motorhome. Moving away from the control panel and into the kitchen area, we've discussed obviously about priming the system. You've got a 3-burner hob, you've got 2 burners and 1 electric hob, 1 electric ring rather, and your oven and grill, which is just below. In the kitchen area, you've also got really nice bit of storage, and in here you will notice that you've got 2 grey valves. These are what called isolation valves, and they will allow you to isolate certain areas of the vehicle. These are only here for the technicians when working on the motorhome, so please leave these as they are. You don't really want to be messing with these. This is, as I say, really for when we're gas checking the vehicle. But I just wanted to point them out to you so you know what they are. And then up at the top, you've got a cutlery drawer in here. You've also got 2 12-volt points to charge your phone, a 230-volt socket, and then your controls for both your bed and also your table. To operate these, you firstly need to make sure that you have your key, which you can see just in here, which is in this plastic box on the passenger side. Providing the key is in, and obviously you turn that as it is now, I can come back to here and press this button, and that will allow me to drop the table, just like so. Once that's dropped all the way, I can then press the button for the bed, which is just next to it here, and as you can see, that will then drop the bed. nice and easily. Just make sure that everything is obviously clear on the underside of it. And the great thing with this bed is you can stop it at whatever height you want. But in most situations, customers will drop this all the way down, so it's nice and easier to get on and off. And just like so, it will stop automatically. You can see you've got really nice, easy access into the bed. Your bedding can stay on here. The only thing I'd recommend is taking your pillows off and storing them elsewhere. And then you're good to go. Once you have finished, all you've got to do is pop it back up like so, and then it will gain your lounge back. As I mentioned on the outside of the van as well, I'd recommend taking some spare fuses with you, just in case. What tends to happen is if you overload the bed, you may put too much weight on there, or as it goes up, the pressure from the pillows may get trapped in between the ceiling. You could potentially blow a fuse. In that case, take some spare fuses with you, so it's nice and easy should you run into that issue. Once the bed's back up, you can also create this area into a bed should you want to. All you've got to do is slide the table across, pull out this lever, and as you can see, the top folds out and rests onto this point here. That will support the lower bed, and as I mentioned, you've got them cushions there that then just slot in to the middle, so you could have two down here and two up there should you want to. In the lounge as well, you've also got flip-up travelling seats. As you can see, your flip-up travelling seat is underneath here. You've also got another one underneath here. I've just removed the cushions just to show you how this operates. So all you've got to do is pull this lever like so, pull the back of the seat back up towards you, and then arrange the cushions in such a fashion where you can then sit facing forwards. And as you can see, I've just popped the cushions back on, and then you're ready for travelling with a second person, or a third person rather. And like I said, you've got the same over there as well. So next up, moving on from the lounge back into your kitchen area, directly opposite the kitchen you've got your fridge. So the fridge on here, this operates just by holding this button down. That will allow you to turn the fridge on. Using this little square here, if I hold this, and I can select through the various options that I've got. The A button stands for auto, and that will automatically assign whatever fuel you've got to the vehicle. Now at the moment, I've not got any fuel supplied to the vehicle. I've not got gas, electric or 12 volt supply. So in that situation, it will by default select gas. But whatever fuel you'll have supplied at the time, it will select for you. And as I say, just by clicking that square, you can decide which fuel you are wanting. But I'd personally just leave it on auto if I was you, because it'll do the work for you. Now, if you're wild camping, you can run this fridge off gas. When you're travelling, of course, you can run it off 12 volt electric. And when you're plugged into your site, you can run this off 230 volt electric. In my opinion, or not in my opinion, something that you've got to always remember, because a lot of people find this difficult or forget this, is if, for example, you find that you're wild camping, some people will think that they can run this fridge off 12 volt. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It would just draw so much power, it would leave you with nothing left in the leisure battery. So in that case, when you're wild camping, you can only run this fridge off gas. When you're travelling and your ignition is on, you have something called a built-in alternator, which, as your engine battery is running, will send charge and feed into your leisure battery, which will then allow you to run the fridge off that battery. So just bear that in mind. When your ignition's on and you're travelling, it's 12 volt. When you're wild camping, it's gas. You can see it's flashing at me at the moment as well, because it's saying I've not got the fuel supplied. So that's when you know you've got the incorrect fuel, or you've not got a fuel whatsoever. You can also change the temperature as well on the fridge should you want to, just like so, by pressing the little square. And you can also click this button and that will stop air from coming in as well. To turn it off, all you've got to do is hold the button, that will turn off. And you've got your fridge, which is below, and your freezer, which is up at the top. Next up, to heat the boiler, obviously we discussed about heating the vehicle, but to actually heat the boiler, you've got two controls up at the top. You've got one for the electric, or one if you're wanting to run it off gas. They both do the same thing. In the middle position as they are currently, the boiler is off, or the boiler heater rather is off, so it's not going to heat any water. Depending on what you're supplied with, either electric or gas, will determine which one you select. If you're plugged into 230 volt electric, you'll run it off the electric. So you can either press this up or press it down, depending on what amount of electric you are supplied with. The bottom switch here will mean that you can run the boiler off 2 kilowatt electric, which in most situations and scenarios you can. Or up at the top, if I press that to the top, it will allow you to run the boiler off 1 kilowatt electric. It's the same thing really just for gas, and you can see it gives you either 50 degrees or 70 degrees. In most situations you'll probably run it on 70 degrees to get it up to temperature, but you can then always flick it to 50 degrees should you want to. And of course you'll use the gas for when you're wild camping. But that's up there, and as I say, that's completely separate. That is for when you are heating the water. And when you're heating the water, like I mentioned on the outside, that little cap right up at the top needs to come off to ensure that the chimney can air and breathe. Into the bathroom area now, you can see that you've got, as I say, we've discussed about priming the system. The main thing that we need to discuss obviously in here is the toilet. So I made reference to the blade on the outside of the vehicle, having that closed and opened and when to use it. The blade that I kept on mentioning about was this piece of plastic here. At the moment it is closed, but if I push that away from me, it is open. So when the cassette is in use, you need to, of course, open the blade so all the waste can drop into the cassette below. You've then got a blue button up at the top. Click that blue button and that will allow you to flush the entire cassette. Once you've done that, pull the blade back towards you. That will seal the cassette, and you do that for 2 reasons. The main reason being is it stops any odours from escaping, but 2 is it gets you into the habit of having that cassette closed, so when you come to remove it, it's nice and easy to remove and you don't get it stuck or jammed. And then, as I say, the blue button on here will activate your flush. You will get a red light on here when you need to, of course, empty the cassette, and you do need your pump on for this to operate the flush, just so you know, which in most situations you will. Your shower is directly opposite the toilet area, so it's a really good size in there, which is held together by a magnet. And then in the back, I open up these drawers, you can see you've got a really good bit of hanging space and storage either side. Let them clip them just like so. Then just below you've also got a sliding point here which will allow you access into the garage should you want. Finally, before we conclude on today's video, you can see that you've got a blackout blind here and also a fly screen. And not on this window but on these windows around the vehicle, as well as your skylights. You can open them. All you've got to do for these is simply pinch the plastic tab, open up, and then you can push the window out. You can also put these on venting should you want to allow a little bit of airflow through, but please ensure these are completely sealed to avoid any air getting through, so when you're travelling you don't run the risk of it ripping and pulling off. The same goes for the front skylights as well. And that concludes the handover video on this Chausson Etape 650. I hope you enjoyed.